Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to the Mel Blackwell Experience on this August 23rd, the year of our Lord, 2026. Want to get started today. This will be a great, interesting episode. A little different, but we're going to stay on track. Let's get started with this.
Why would you choose to worship a creator God who forbade man to actually eat from the tree of knowledge, one which you have obviously eaten from because you're a rather knowledgeable man? Why would you choose to worship this sort of deity who would have kept you dumb?
That's a very good question. I'll tell you why it's a good question. I notice it was asked originally by a snake.
Touché.
That is not implying any offense at all.
None taken.
Because, well, let me try to answer your question. The story in Genesis fascinates me because it is a story that defines for us what life really is. It defines it at its various levels, from the physical to the aesthetic, to family life, to work. And the highest thing in life, according to that story, is a relationship with God that's morally determined. The answer to your question, though, is this. Do I worship a God who wants to keep me down? Tell you the kind of God I worship. I worship the kind of God who made me in his image and coded himself into humanity, came into our world to provide a basis through his death and resurrection that I could become something that I was not by creation, and that is a son of God. And the basic message of the Christian faith is a magnificent one, that God is prepared to give the individual who trusts Christ his very life, and that person rises in that sense and is given all the potential of God to be able to enjoy his friendship. The capacity of enjoying friendship with God is the biggest thing in my life, and it will be the biggest thing eternally. The notion that God is trying to keep us down is actually the original lie.
That's good, isn't it? That's really good. So what we'll do today, we'll jump into a little business best practice, focus on a couple of good, solid things, move a little bit into, what exactly is, civilization based upon, right? And we'll tie that into some current events. But from a business best practice, one of the things I wanted to talk about today were a couple of things. One is being a pony up leader. What does it mean to be a pony up leader? Like the leader ponies up first. And then dive into asking a cat to bark. That's one of my favorites because it's funny, but it's actually, it's intense. When you get into the asking a cat to bark part of culture, kind of cleansing the culture and fixing a culture, it is disruptive. I mean, it really is, because there are many reasons people ask cats to bark. But let's look a little bit at the pony up culture. So what we mean by pony up culture is that you really do have to eat your own dog food. If you're asking people to do something, if you want them to operate by certain standards, if you want them to meet the core values and or the basics of your business, then you have to go first. You don't want to be a hypocrite. And that starts by letting folks know it's okay to make mistakes, because guess what? We're not even going to have a perfect hour, much less a perfect day or a perfect week. I mean, we just screw up. I've often said that, companies are screwed up because they're made up of people, and people are screwed up, And so it's just true. So what we're trying to do is overcome our bent towards dysfunction, towards more of a bent towards order. How can we structure our business? How can we have order? How can we have standards? What can we do to have highest common denominators instead of lowest common denominators? Whatever it is we come up with, the leader goes first. The leader has to go first. It doesn't even mean that the leader is the best at it. It means the leader is the most committed to living up to the standard. And so that's what we mean by pony up. I know I mentioned this before, but I really love when we were little, Grandmama Blackwell would be making a pie, and we would walk into the kitchen. Of course, we're just chaos. It was all boys. There were no granddaughters. It was just grandsons. And we would get tearing through there like boys do, just destructive. And, I would always go take a shine to what's Grandmama doing, and I'd go get like a stool and pull it up and get up where high enough where I could see it. I'd be like, Grandmama, what are we making? And she's like, well, we're making a pie, making an apple pie. And so I reach over and grab some apples and just throw, and she's like, no, Mel, no. And she would carefully take them off. You could tell that she didn't like it. But for her, it was like, this is a great opportunity to teach. So she would take the apples that I threw in there and move them out, and she'd say, Mel, we take care of things. When we make a pie, we put the apples in just like so. And it could be, she loved to make like, blackberry pie, which was amazing actually. And so, but this happened to be apples at this time, or maybe it was blackberries, but she's putting them in there, and she's like, Mel, we do it just like this to take care of things. So if I was going to help Grandmama, I had to take care of things. That was the rule. If I was going to be disorderly or disruptive, she would say, you can get down now because you're not taking care of things. You're not going to mess up our pie, and you'll thank me later because it'll be good. I'd be like, okay. So I might have stayed up there and helped, or I might have just said, I think I'll go outside with my cousins and go be destructive. The other time we might be down at the bank. We were at Lake Jordan in Hopeful, Alabama, and we would be there on the bank, little cinder block wall. And Grandmama couldn't swim, which was funny. She would always get out in there with us to like swim, and she would sit down, but she couldn't swim. It's like, who doesn't know how to swim? And so she wasn't scared of the water, but she would never get out very deep. But she's there at the bank, and she comes out, and we're out there with cane poles. Man, we're just throwing them around, and people are getting hooked in the side, and we would put them out there, and the fish would steal our minnows. And she would say, Mel, she said, you're not taking care of things. Come here, let me show you how to bait your hook again. And she would show me just how carefully to do it. Literally, it's like, I don't know why when you're little, sometimes you can see it, but you just don't. Either you just don't pay attention, or you just don't care, or you forget. But it was pretty simple. And you hook them in like this, and that way they won't get off. And then I would catch a fish, and I'd be so proud. And she'd say, see, you have to take care of things. So how many times do you think Grandmama had the take care of things conversation with us boys? Dozens, maybe hundreds. And so in business, it's been said, Ken DeWitt says it a lot, 7 times, 7 ways. You're not going to just say it once and people get it. They might hear you, they might remember it, but for whatever reason, they didn't apply the wisdom in a particular moment. So you remind them of the wisdom. Taking care of things needs to be continually discussed in your business. One of the most powerful things we do in Uncommon Sense, in any culture, I didn't invent it, that's why it's called Uncommon Sense. You really want to instill language that not only you say, but other people say. One of the funnest things that's happening for me right now is I'm getting to work with some different companies that are doing what I call the leadership team experience, which is their leadership team reads the book, Uncommon Sense, over an 8 to 12 week period. It doesn't, only a couple of chapters, 2 or 3 chapters a week. And then for about 45 minutes to an hour, they meet to discuss it as a team. Nothing but just the book, just to discuss what we've learned in the book, how we can apply it. And then I join every other meeting, and they'll bounce questions off of me. And it is so much fun, and it's fascinating because they start using the language. They get excited about the language. They start saying these same types of things to each other. And the feedback I'm getting is that the leadership team experience has been real helpful for the leadership team, but they're seeing it travel down into the company, and it's starting to bounce. They're getting traction on language. So the take care of things conversation, you get to this, I think it's like chapter 10, and I believe I mentioned it sooner, but by the time you get midway through the book, 150, 160 pages, you've been introduced to take care of things. So when I join the leadership table with them, I reinstill, I'm like, guys, have that conversation. Take care of things occurs when you're talking to somebody who has more potential than they're bringing to the table. Dude, take care of things. Come here. You dragging in here. You look like you got ate by a coyote and crapped off a cliff, man. You look like death eating a cracker. Like, what are you doing? Like, then you remind them of the best plays, which the best plays hadn't even come in this part of the book. It comes in a little bit later. But once you get through all of these different cultural language, these viral things that people latch onto. Man, you know, I need you to take care of things. And so the take care of things can be a lot of, you know, you're talking to somebody, they're real good at 3 or 4 parts of their job, but they're neglecting another. You pull them aside, you say, hey, I need you to take care of things. Now, if you're in a pony up culture, they see you taking care of things. You call a meeting, you show up. You tell people, hey, we're not going to be looking at our phones during the meeting. Well, there's nobody should be looking at their phones. I mean, you mean what you say what you do. You go out there and you do what you say. It's just simple consistency. It's kind of like being good parenting, right? And so, you know, as you talk about this, you know, with leadership teams and people, and it begins to travel down, pony on up first it falls hard up. It really does. So a pony up leader takes care of things. A pony up leader shares things like take care of things and lives it, and they can see it. You know, if we have a dress standard, man, you know, Mel, he really looks sharp, right? He you know, I always tried to dress nicely because I felt like I was young and leading, and people didn't take you seriously when you're young. So at least I'd look like a cat, you know, fake it till you make it. And but the team needs to trust you, and they should always feel safe around you, that you are consistent. They should be able to predict, for the most part, kind of how you're going to behave in a certain moment. Every now and then they don't know you real well and you surprise them, but you want them to be able to count on you. And you want them to be in this position. They do not want to let you down. Why? Because you don't let them down. It's real simple, isn't it? And so you have to set a tone in your business when it comes to commitments. And so if you make a commitment, you follow through. If you're in an uncomfortable moment, they see you grind through it. And if you've got to make a tough decision, if somebody's got to go outside and shoot the old horse, Granddaddy picks up the gun. He doesn't make a big deal about it. You might hear the screen door, you know, shut on the way out the door. And then a few minutes later, and Granddaddy comes in with a tear in his eye, and he hangs up the gun and says, "What's for supper?" And he does what he's got to do, and that's ponying up, and not necessarily sharing your pain or your burden down in the business. That's tough. That's tough. Your job is to remove obstacles down. You're looking down, looking for, how do I prove things more quickly? How do I move this business at the speed of business? How do I prove things? A pony up leader approves things while the iron is hot. A pony up leader understands that once you've created a safe town, which is critical, once you've begun lowering the slope, let me just say this. Creating a safe town, lowering the slope, and aligning the team is a never-ending slog. It never ends. So you don't do it and then say, well, I did it for y'all. You're always about the business of doing it. You're always about the business of making the town safe. You're always about the business of lowering the slope. You're always about the business of aligning the team. You're always about the business of raising the bar. That's your job. That's what executives should do. If you lead a team, that's what you should be doing for that team. What do you want in return? You do your jobs, guys, because I'm doing mine, right? And we start doing our job at goal. And I need the best from all of us. I need to give my best. You give your best. Best at work, best at home, best in the community, best work of our career. Y'all are so lucky. I am going to be the best CEO I've ever been for y'all. That's what a pony up leader is bringing to the table. And so I think that is real helpful. And, you know, there's people that come to your mind when you say that, like, who was a pony up leader? You know, what did they do? How would you emulate that kind of person? But that's really what you're looking to try to do. So it's a lot about rolling up your sleeves, right? And not looking for a photo op or trying to pretend like you're the person, but doing it when nobody's looking, showing the character in the toughest of moments, and really, really getting out front and doing what you say, and taking care of business and taking care of things. So I'll run through just a couple of things. In a healthy organization, okay, the best leaders I've ever worked with, they did 4 things. They removed obstacles, any obstacle that slows their people down. They're looking for it. They're excited when they find them, okay? They're like, if you're out there and you see where we can lower the slope, where I can remove obstacles for you, that's an urgent matter. Let's get that done. They create accountability systems, okay? So they want to keep progress visible and consistent. What do I mean by that? Well, momentum is something that when people can see it and they can feel it, it really, really drives them. It's so nice. When you're pushing a big boulder up a hill, it sucks that first little while. But when that thing gets going and you top a crest and it starts rolling on its own, there's some exhilaration to, man, look what we're doing. This is working. This is working. So you want to have accountability systems that make progress visible and consistent, right? That's ponying up. Another one is you want to live the discipline. This is number 3. Whatever I expect from everybody else, I do it. And like I said, I do it flawed because I'm screwed up too, and everybody's screwed up. But gosh, I do it. I bring my best. Mel's going to bring his best. And then number 4 is provide crystal clear expectations. So there's no confusion about what good looks like. Have you ever been around? You can get in these conversations with these people that are word twisters, and their whole world is to make language like ambiguous and just tie you up and leave you laying on the side of the road, in fetal position, confused. And they'll be like, what is good anyway? What is good, man? What is bad? I got you. I call it the unanswered question. And it's like, no. We want to make it real dang clear what good looks like in our business. What does it look like? Paint the picture. People love it when you paint that picture of hey, this is what good looks. So this is here's where we're going. This is our vision. Here's the subvision of how we're going to do it. And guys, let me tell you how it looks, and you tell them a story and you get them excited, and you have to tell that story over and over. Just like how many times did you, every night your kids want to hear possibly even the same story. Remember that? They're like, it's bedtime. Dad, tell the wolf story. That was ours, where I would tell the story about the little kid that cried wolf. They wanted that story every night. And every time that the wolf, would attack the little kid, the lion kid or whatever, I would be like, I would go tickle them or whatever, and they just loved it. But 7 times, 7 ways, be very repetitive, define what good looks like, tell the story, tell your people stories about what it was like back then, what it's like today, what it's going to be like tomorrow. Those four best practices are really simple, but I found that most leaders don't do them. They talk about accountability, but they don't follow through. They say they want to have speed, but they bury decisions, or they don't have a real clear structure or communication structure or org chart so that decisions can get made at the speed of business. They don't eliminate red tape. You want to eliminate red tape before anybody even finds it. But if they find it, you dang sure want to get it out of there. And so anyway, when you look at removing obstacles, look at things like slow approvals, broken systems. And here's a big one, y'all. Meetings that go nowhere. I think a pony up leader encourages his or her business, to have this one thing when it comes to meetings. If you're not solving problems in meetings, just get up and leave. Nobody has the authority to make people sit through a meeting in the entire enterprise that we're not solving problems. It's fascinating that a pony up leader also lives by the standards that we set when we say, don't bring up a problem unless you can attach a solution to it. Then bring it to us and we'll talk. Well, why? Because it changes the whole culture. It really, really changes the culture. When you look at people and say, I am here to talk about solutions. Who's got some solutions for me? Well, obviously there's a problem attached to it. Well, you don't solve nothing. So by focusing on, I'm excited to talk about how we're going to get it done. How are we going to get it done? How are we going to get it done? I want to talk about the how journey. How are we going to get it done? But when somebody comes to you and they say, yeah, I'm just struggling this quarter. I'm just not going to be able to hit my division is not going to hit my quota. That's half a sentence. Where's the solution? You see what I mean? A pony up leader says, okay, I'm waiting. I ain't got nothing to say. I heard half a sentence. You're not finished. Well, I hadn't thought very much about how I can solve it. Okay, I tell you what, I'm going to go find somebody that's gotten that far. And when you get there, call me back. I'll see you. I'm not going to get bogged down into a counseling session with somebody that's not willing to think of the solution. They get paid. That's your solution. Come up with it. I'll help you. But see what I'm saying? So when you really, really start focusing as a pony up leader, that say part of the pony up is we bring the solution with us. Now, Is my solution very good? No, but I've thought through it and I'm looking for some help. What do you think about my solution to this problem? What do you think we can do? And what you might do is get 5 or 6 minutes into that and send them back and go, hey, take some of this, noodle on it, call so-and-so over there. They had the same problem last year, and you keep working on it. Circle back with me when you feel like you got a tighter solution. And you continually remind people, I pay you to solve these problems for me. And I'm engaged with you to help you think a little bit, but I can't think for you. And oh, by the way, I'm really here to lower the slope. I'm going to make the town safe, lower the slope, line the team. And, bad news, dude, I'm raising the bar. So better hit that one, because that one's lower than the one that's coming. And that is a pony up leader. That's what pony up leaders do. And it's really, really awesome when you do it. And when you get a whole team of leaders doing this, it's just phenomenal. So we kind of talked about removing obstacles, creating the accountability systems. Living disciplined is something that's, you have to live whatever the discipline is that you're bringing to the table. And I think that is something that we can get our head around. So I won't really spend a ton of time on that one. But I'll ask you a few questions here. Before that, when you get to the best practice 4, which is providing clarity, even best people can't operate in the dark. Your org chart, your accountability chart, structure first, people second. Remember your organizational chart, those are your communication arteries. When you have somebody in your business that is a culture bandit, they'll hijack your message. Okay. So that you have a communication breakdown there. When you didn't structure your business correctly, you structured around people instead of around the right roles, there's a communication breakdown there. So when I walk into a business and they're like, yeah, I'm having this issue in this area, one of the first places I look is at the accountability chart, the org chart, and look at it real quick and just say, tell me about that guy right there. Well, Bob, he's been here for 25 years. I'm like, there you go. There, your message is breaking down right there. Now, I'm not judging Bob yet, but Bob might be a culture bandit, or we might be asking a cat to bark, which we're about to get to. But providing clarity is huge. Obviously, there's things you can do structurally to have span of control. But if you have the right span of control, all right, then you're able to react at the speed of business to whatever's going on in your organization down under you. And when people need you, you're able to respond at the speed of business, and you're able to give them a structure and an expectation. So the discipline is, don't make people wait on a decision that we could have made. I've often said that people don't understand that, but if it took you 2 days to make a decision, to sign off on something that you could have approved and won, then what have you really done in your business? You've doubled the cost of that decision. Everybody sat and waited for that day. Now, it's kind of like somebody that's got the shot, right? They got the shot. They're like, hey, the target's in sight. Can I take the shot? Hey, are y'all there? Hey, seriously, I'm going to lose my shot. My window of opportunity is closing. Hey, seriously, I traveled all the way over here. I've slept in a dead-gum mud puddle for 3 days. I got him in the crosshairs. Can I take the shot? Too late. Didn't get an answer. Happens in business all the time. And that's what happens. And so, questions to ponder. Do my people have what they need to make decisions quickly? One way that you can not be needed to make a decision is not be needed to make a decision. So empower people to be able to make their decisions and look for the decision approval process to be delegated as far as it's reasonable to do so, right? So somebody can be a control freak that they have to be involved in every single decision because that one time that it didn't work. I often said, I'm glad that somebody's toilet didn't blow up on them when they were little. They'd be pooping in the woods. Just because something didn't work one time doesn't mean you just throw the baby out with the bathwater, or just tear the toilet out of the bathroom and just head to the woods. And so if you're worried about people approving things because you're not involved, you really need to step back and take a look at some uncommon sense principles. And you need to be asking the question, do I really need to be involved on this decision, or could it have been handled down under me? That is huge. That's pony up too. Pony up isn't I'm always involved in every single thing because I'm so important that I'm going to slow everything down and our business is going to grind to a crawl because of me. No. So push it down, get out of the way, and when you are involved and when it's necessary you be involved, move quickly. That's discipline. That's ponying up. And the expectation is everybody does it. Nobody should be left hanging out there with, can I take the shot? and the business was there to take the shot and they didn't get the answer in time. That is catastrophic. So you say, that's not good enough. That's mediocre. Do people know what good looks like in your company? So the first three questions, do my people have what they need to make decisions quickly? Do they? Have I structured it where they can get a quick decision? Am I involved in every decision? Am I the bottleneck? Secondly, do they know what good looks like? Do they know that we say you did a good job? Do they even know? Okay. And then the third one is, do our structures enable or restrict progress? Good stuff. Simple stuff. One last point here on the pony up culture. We have in our just departmental clarity of things. Part of the clarity in your business, when you're saying create clarity, is you have intra-department and you have inter-department, just like intrastate and interstate. Intra-department is within one department, okay? It's what happens inside a single team, their meetings, their tasks, their workflows. Intra-department concerns should be handled by the individual head of that team. And you want to be able to say, hey, that person, like we're talking about delegate, and you make those decisions, you have the approval up to this threshold, you make those decisions. Here's the kind of good decisions. I know what good looks like. We set up the discipline. That happens within one department. What can happen is you look out at your business is you can say, I've got 3 or 4 department heads doing a really good job, and I've got 1 or 2 over here that something's wobbly. It's not cool. Everybody needs to be above the bar. And so it's not fair to the 3 or 4 that are nailing it to have to be playing along somebody, because you know how the assembly line in a business works. The paperwork flows over here. The decisions flow over there. The customer service blows up the deal. So your intra-department is where the senior executives look down at the department head and say, take care of things. Get your act together. Pony up, man. Here's the standard. Here's what good looks like. You've got to remove the obstacles that you can remove. Why am I removing all the obstacles? Why am I down here with my chisel squaring off your square wheels, dude? You have a chisel. You have the ability. So you're pushing all that down. You know what I mean? So you really want to make sure that the stuff doesn't just flow all the way up to the top, because it'll choke out the execs. Then we have interdepartmental, which is really interesting. And that's what happens between teams. Okay, it's just like interstate commerce or interstate, the FBI. So what happens between teams? Sales to operations, ops to service, right? Service to finance, logistics to customers. So you have all these issues that need to be addressed by the senior executive. So conflicts that occur within a department, you go to the department head and say, hey, man, you need to get those managed. But conflicts that occur between departments, well, that's got to be handled by somebody up above all those cats. So it can be a senior VP or it can be whomever. But a pony up leader doesn't sit and watch and enjoy the infighting between departments. A pony up leader gets down in there and does exactly what that we said that, the 3 things are, right? They absolutely, really the 4, they remove obstacles, they create accountability systems, they live the discipline, and they provide clear expectations. Well, that's what you're doing interdepartment. Is sometimes you sit down with people and you say, I'm not sure what the conflict is, but it's probably square wheels. It's probably cats being asked to bark. It's probably culture bandits. It's probably some sort of structure issue. It could easily be a data issue where they're just flying blind and bumping into each other. You don't know. But as a senior leader, you're very focused on the conflicts that are occurring between departments, and you want to try to get those tapped down so that everybody works well together. I often say it's like the symphony conductor that's sitting up in front of the symphony, and he or she, it's like, they tap that thing, their little wand, and then they hit that first note, and they're like, oh, man, that sounds terrible. What the world? And so sometimes that's what it feels like to sit atop of interdepartmental conflict, is you just look down and you're like, what's going on with you people? And they all get in rooms and you can't figure it out. Yeah, you have to figure it out. A pony up leader says that's beneath the standard. This is lowest common denominator. The solution needs to be attached to the problem. I've sat in many executive meetings where we're building a culture, an uncommon sense culture of you have to bring a solution to every problem, and sat through an entire hour-and-a-half meeting that was nothing but a problem about all the fighting they're doing with each other. And I'm like, one of you mother scratchers needs to bring a solution up in here, or I'm calling the meeting. Does anybody have a solution that's not him? She sucks. It's all him, And so it's fast, it's fun. But when you, as a senior executive, when you can hit that first note and that thing just like, whoa, and it just just hums. Everything's right on tune. It is a fulfillment, a feeling like no other. And the people love working in that environment. That's what we're going for. We're going for that moment where everybody does what they're supposed to be doing at or above goal with great excellence, with they're all ponying up and everybody's dialing it in as their best self. And man, does it sound good. All right. So let's go real quick into asking a cat to bark before we finish up the business best practice section. Asking a cat to bark, I mean, I've told it before, but for listeners that may not have heard it, I was sitting in some meetings one time and everybody's just going on and on about this person that is doing a bad over here and that person that isn't doing well over there. And well, this person's been moved all around the company and they still suck. And I made the comment one day, I said, man, y'all are asking a cat to bark. And it's been a long time ago. It's been 20 plus years ago. And the whole room was for a second just kind of sat there and they all started laughing. And then it was kind of like one of those creeper laughs. Everybody just started laughing. Then we all kind of guffawed, and then I started laughing. Everybody's just like asking a cat to bark. That's really funny. And then everybody wants to go right back to the worshiping the problem. And I'm like, no. We have the solution on the table right now. You're asking a cat to bark. It is a very powerful statement. Let's dissect it. You are asking a cat to bark. Well, that's kind of stupid to do. That's not going to work. You're not going to be successful. Okay. The cat is going to go, meow. That's an obvious statement. And if we're looking for somebody that can go woof, well, then that person can't do it. Person in the wrong seat. So move them. And they go, well, we'll move them over to that dog seat. I'm like, no. Cat goes in a cat seat. Dog goes in a dog seat. So if this person is a cat and we don't have cat seats, off they go. We can't do anything. I'm sorry. We're not going to create jobs for them because it's structure first, people second. That's the best practice. But what's fascinating is a lot of folks don't understand the communication breakdown you have when you put a cat in a dog environment. So think about it. So let's say that there is a fire, okay, and on floor 38 in the building, we've got several cats that are in a dog job, and the message comes across the wire, which in dog language means there's a big arse fire that we got to get everybody cleared out of the building. And the cats kind of look around and they're like, what'd he say? And they're meow, meow. You've got a communication breakdown. It's not just a personality thing. It's not just a capability thing. It's a communication thing. It's going to twist up your communications. Okay. And so you just don't want to ask somebody to do something they're not wired to do and expect anything less than failure. So when you say things like, don't ask a cat to bark, then it brings you back to what is the best practice. Right person, right seat. To have a right seat, the roles have to be well-defined, simplistic, but powerful. We have to capture it. We have to capture what does good look like? What is the discipline? We have to be very clear in how we communicate it. And then what do we have to do? We have to pony up. I've been in a lot of situations where we go through this whole thing, and then one of the strongest players in there, you walk in there and you find something's blinking red, and you're like, why is this not doing? And you walk in there, and yonder sits a cat, just feet up on the desk in the dog roll. And you're like, dude, we've covered this 55 times. You will never get done trying to have the right people in the right seats. But there are so many emotional reasons that people leave a cat in a dog seat. But let me tell you what happens, okay? If you ignore the misalignment of having people in the wrong seats, so what could misalignment look like? A culture bandit, hands down. That is absolutely, you have not made your town safe. If you're not going to make your town safe, you're not a serious leader and you shouldn't have the chair. It's just cruel to make your sheep live amongst wolves. We've been through it. The wolves will take over. They'll run a subculture. Your sheep have no choice but to cut deals with the wolf, because while you're not around, the wolf's going to bite them. So the bully's going to be running a part of your business in a counterculture way, and you're not going to be able to see it. It's your fault, because those people have no choice but to strike a deal with the bully, right? So that's what it took to make peace with the guy that you didn't have the guts to lead. So we're definitely talking about, do not do that. Do not have culture bandits. But what about cats in dog chair? What about a cat being asked to bark? What could that do? It's terrible. So what happens is the other team members start tiptoeing around the problem. Somebody's got to carry the quota. So somebody's got to do the job. Old Mel, he can't block, but the old coach has got him over there at left tackle. So we watch out because they're going to move their best guy. He's just going to come running right over Mel and smush the quarterback. So everybody shifts, then you become vulnerable. That, yeah, we can cover. But at some point, I didn't do my job, and everybody else wasn't able to do enough of my job, and we get smoked. And so people will start tiptoeing around the problem, and it opens up a gap for you to get smoked by the markets, by whatever might happen in your business, by a competitor, by just bad luck if one of your best players dies or quits, right? So you're just waiting for the day that if you're going to be dumb, you're going to have to be real tough. What else happens? Meetings turn into therapy sessions when you got cats being asked to bark. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Well, I talked to him, hey, we got that training that's coming up. He's going to be going to that all week training down there in Orlando. That's really going to help that cat learn how to go woof, woof. It ain't going to work. So you have all this therapy and all these people with all the great, it's like, why are we putting all this effort into something as stupid as making a cat to bark, y'all? Let's get a dog and let's run. We got some racing to do. And so what else? Okay, accountability gets really blurry because everybody's afraid to step on toes. The right thing to do is remove old Mel because he's a cat in a dog chair, but we're not going to do it. So everybody starts tiptoeing around and everybody starts, you skirt accountability. And here's the ultimate thing. Eventually good people will leave or they'll just lay down on you because the culture tells them that results don't matter. Ouch. You just don't want to do that, right? So we all know why leaders keep asking cats to bark, but let's don't do it. There's a cost to lying to yourself. Probably the greatest cost to lying to yourself if you're a leader is people see it. And if you lie to yourself, you'll dang sure lie to them. So then you start saying to them, well, Mel's really not a cat in a dog chair. And you start making up all these different excuses for Mel. But when they miss their quota, you don't make any excuses for them. When everybody misses their bonus check, then nobody shows up and says, well, Mel, old club-footed meow meow Mel over there, sure would have been great to have somebody strong in that divisional president role because his division stunk, right? I'm going to lie to myself as an executive and keep old Mel around another year. Don't do it, all right? Don't do it. So I hope that's very helpful for y'all. Look, this next segment is going to be really great. I'm looking forward to this. So it's fascinating as we shift now into maybe a little bit more of the bigger picture of business in America, right? America, the greatest country in the history of mankind, but teeter-tottering on the edge of letting some wolves in through communism, Islam, and just Luciferianism. We covered it last week. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, I'd hit the pause button, go back and listen to it, and pick this one up right here because we're going to kind of keep on moving from that. But, you really do have to wonder. I was always fascinated, like the Ten Commandments growing up. I always thought the Ten Commandments were like, those are God's laws for, the church and setting up church and churchy stuff and everything. And it's like, yeah, but what it really was you had the Egyptian, the Pharaoh that had the Jewish people, they'd been slaves for decades and decades and decades and decades. And, forever practically what it seemed like to those poor people. And then God gets Moses to say, lead my people out of there. And we're going to go set up a place for them. And, it's going to lead them to the promised land, which would be Israel. And, but they had to go for decades again, wandering through, and they kept irritating God and not doing what he said. But the 10 Commandments were God's gift to Moses and the Hebrew people, the Jews, to just say, here's the rules to set your society up by. These were rules of governance. This was how to not just have chaos where you're continually always, there was a time that Moses was spending all of his time from sun up to sundown settling disputes amongst the millions of people that were, hey, he's got his goats are over here eating up all my stuff. And he's like, well, his wife smells bad. I can smell her all the way down yonder. She smells worse than a goat. And so they had these disputes there. And so God is so kind. He gives them the gift of the 10 Commandments, this brilliant list of 10 simple powerful ways to live to be blessed by God. And it's fascinating how we embrace that so wholeheartedly as a nation. Not all the founding fathers were as Christian and loyal to Jesus and God as others. But there was no space between them on, we've got to set this country up on these basic Judeo-Christian values, because this is how, like, one of the ways that you can learn to appreciate that is go live somewhere that they live other ways. Go live somewhere that they don't pay any homage whatsoever to God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, or the Ten Commandments. And you will crawl your way back to America and say, man, please, I love it, and kiss the dirt and say, I'm so happy to be back. Once you've seen the other side of this thing, you will embrace the Ten Commandments. You will embrace the Constitution. The problem is we got a country full of radical people that came across the border illegally. We got a bunch of people that have been educated by indoctrination into terrible different policies, and they don't know. And so the Ten Commandments really do belong in your business. The Ten Commandments really do belong in your city, in your county, and in your state, and in our federal government, because it is the basis for being able to coexist with each other and prosper. It's that simple. And so Charlie Kirk had a quick snippet on this, less than a minute, that I want us to listen to, and then we'll circle back.
Now, the morality that built the West is the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments is the best rules of life for any society to flourish and to be able to succeed. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no other idols. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. Honor your mother and fathers. May live long in the land of which you are in. Honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not covet. Do not commit adultery. It's out of order, but that's still the Ten Commandments. Those rules for life is what the founders believed, so much so that they're in the halls of Congress and the Supreme Court. That we believe is transcendently transmitted to us, and that when we do not submit to those Ten Commandments, our country starts to fall apart.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating, isn't it, that the one religion that gets kicked out of everything is God. And then all other Luciferian, teachings or whatever they may be, they're like, oh, that's okay, but they're attacking the Judeo-Christian. We hate the Jews, we hate the Christians. Get the Ten Commandments out of the public square. Separation of church and state. But oh, by the way, everybody go visit the mosque and let's have the call to prayer twice a day. And so it's hypocritical, right? It's hypocritical. It's not a pony up culture in America when American citizens don't stand up for the Ten Commandments. God literally carved the Ten Commandments in the stone and handed them to Moses for mankind. And you'll be like, yeah, I don't really care what God's got to say. When I'm setting up my government, and really, it wouldn't be right to include God. It's like, think about how ridiculous this has gotten, and we've let them do it. When they took down the Ten Commandments from some court square or some city hall, there should have been a bull rush on that place where the citizens went up there with pitchforks and said, you put that back up there. Because when we lay down and let them kick God out of things, we have no idea what godless cities will be like, or a godless school, or a godless college, or a godless NGO, or a godless, FDA, or a godless, healthcare system, or do we? Maybe that's what we're seeing, huh? It's funny. Last week I had a couple of friends call me. They're like, "Man, you messed up during the Big Bad Wolf thing because you kept saying, Robin Hood and the Big Bad Wolf." I said, "No, I did that on purpose. It was a play on words. Obviously, it's Little Red Riding Hood, but these people are acting like Robin Hood because they're trying to say to other people, we'll give you their stuff, right? They're trying to be all noble, like we're doing a good cause. But it was a good catch because I did. I said that Robin Hood and the Big Bad Wolf, and so." It was actually Little Red Riding Hood, of course, but I liked the Robin Hood verbiage, and I slipped it in there and let it go and didn't say anything because I hoped people would catch it. But anyway, if you follow me on that, you really do want to get God back into the schools. You want to get God back into our cities and our state and our counties and our federal government. And, kudos to Trump that he does tout that a lot and that he does do the best he can. And, he's not a model guy for, just, You wouldn't say, let's follow, but you say there's Billy Graham and there's Donald Trump. You'd be like, yeah, I can see a pretty good difference. But Donald Trump has put Christian values and Christianity and protecting Israel and not letting people target Jews as a major part of the foundation of what it takes to make America great again. So I give him credit. But we do not want to let these people. What happens when you kick God out of something? It creates a vacuum. What backfills it? Well, it looks to me pretty serious. Communism, Islam, and just craziness, the whole trans crazy world. And it all comes into the form of some type of religion where you can't talk bad about them. You can't criticize them. You can't deny them their ability to talk and do whatever they want to do. Who would have ever thought that people would take children and talk to them about their sexual nature and their body parts and say to them, you don't need your crazy mama and them. We can just come over here and we'll turn you into a boy or a girl. I mean, that alone right there is like, stop the presses, y'all. I mean, we have reached a line of depravity unlike that I could ever thought would have happened in America. And it needs to be addressed. But there's a couple more things here we want to look on that, and then we're going to switch gears. All right. Let's look at this. So this is a segment. We got Josh Howerton again. He's talking about Katie Kirk's clip where Katie is like, it's just Christian nationalism and Christian nationalism. Y'all, we've got to get away from letting them put us in a box with some words that just be like Christian nationalists. Like, probably so. Love America. Praise Jesus. Kill me now. Let's have a war over Christianity. If I have to put on any shirt other than the Jesus jersey, let's fight, And then somebody goes, well, you need to denounce America. No, let's fight about that too. I love America. So if that makes me a Christian nationalist, so be it. But being afraid of their words, being afraid of their criticism, being afraid of the world, are you serious? Come on. But listen to this. This is fascinating how she comes across.
I want you to respond to something that went crazy viral. So Katie Couric had this. This is like exactly the perfect encapsulation of what I grew up high school and college hearing and feeling.
I would love to get your take on the rise of Christian nationalism in this country and around the world. The University of Massachusetts at Amherst recently released a poll that shows how Americans are feeling with the 250th anniversary of our country.
That's this week.
And
happy birthday.
There's a huge divide between Democrats and Republicans on the extent to which the U.S. should be a Christian country. Nearly 80% of Republicans believe the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation.
Correct.
72% believe the government should advocate Christian values.
Correct.
54% believe the U.S. should be declared a Christian nation. And I thought this was really disturbing.
It's very disturbing.
Another
Christian
Public Religion Research Institute poll found that 56% of Republicans qualify as either adherents or sympathizers of Christian nationalism.
For people who are listening, whenever you hear the phrase Christian nationalism, that is 99.9% of the time, it's a scare label that's intentionally designed to stigmatize Christians advocating for their values in the public square. I'll just shoot you really straight. If you put in front of me, and hey man, your two options are atheistic globalism, like woke secular paganism, or Christian nationalism, I'm going to go, well, heck yes, I'm that one. 99% of the time, Christian nationalism is a scare label. It non-verbally says, I, as a secular person, am allowed to advocate for my values in the public square, but you, as a Christian, are not allowed to advocate for your values in the public square because that's scary Christian nationalism. If somebody goes, hey, Josh, you're a Christian nationalist, I'm like, well, I'm a Christian and I love my nation. If that makes me a Christian nationalist, okay, I don't care, whatever. So this is what she's saying here. I want you to know the play that's being run on you. Yeah. People stigmatize to divide is what they're, so let's stigmatize the phrase so that we can keep you from advocating for your values in the public square, which, by the way, we're just going, well, God's commands are not burdensome. That's actually what's good for people, societies. So we want that stuff.
What's going on here?
You also can't do democracy without history. So those views that people hold, some of them are views about the past, and they're wrong. The United States was not, in fact, founded on Christian principles in any sense. It's simply not true.
So in 1813...
Oh, we're going right into it. Let's go.
Yeah, okay. So John Adams writes Thomas Jefferson a letter. Yep. First vice president, second president, one of the most significant... In fact, 250 years that we're celebrating. He's the guy responsible for so much of it. His fingerprints are on almost everything in the American founding. The letter's like 4.5 pages. I just pulled one sentence from it. He says the general principles upon which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity.
That's amazing. The quote from the professor with Katie Couric is the United States was not in fact founded on Christian principles in any sense. That's simply not true. Then John Adams, who founded the nation, is saying the general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. Yeah. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. The older I get, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or if people are just, there's an element of folks that are just stupider, but they just say things that aren't true. And everybody goes, yeah. Did y'all ever see the movie Idiocracy that Mike Judge did? I mean, Gwen and I watched that years ago. I can't remember when it came out, but it's been out a while. So Mike Judge, creator of Beavis and Butthead, he did Office Space. Remember the movie Office Space, which was hilarious? He had kind of an under-the-radar movie that came out called Idiocracy. And it is so funny. It's scary, though, now because it's become even more true. I remember when we watched it, we're like, whoa, that's hitting too close to home. But I wonder how many decades it'll take before it hits even closer. Well, it went faster than I thought. But the general premise of Idiocracy is that the world is now, right? So the world is kind of like now. It's messed up as it is. But they go out and they find what's Owen Wilson's brother? Luke Wilson. So they find Luke Wilson, and he's like the most, they determine in the military that he's the most average human being alive. They do all these tests, and he's like, yep, that dude is average. He doesn't move the needle. He's pure mediocrity. He's not a drain on society, but he does absolutely nothing for society. He's altogether pretty lazy guy, and he's not very smart. So they say, let's take him and put him in a time machine, and let's send him hundreds of years into the future. I can't remember how many it is, but it's a few ways out. And we'll let him come back and tell us how advanced civilization is, right? We'll see how he measures up. Where is he? Average, above average, or below average? So they shoot him off into the future, and the time machine breaks, and he can't get back. And he gets there, and the world has just gone to such a depraved state that he's like the smartest man alive. And so it's absolutely, I thought it was, Gwen and I laughed so hard. Now, it isn't one that you want to let the little kids watch because it's typical Mike Judge. It's slightly raunchy, but it's not terrible. But it is so funny. It is absolutely hilarious, but it's scary now because you watch it, and he ends up being secretary not sure. He ends up joining the presidential cabinet, and his name is not sure because he sticks his hand, because they do everything. They put a tattoo on you with your name, and they puts his hand in there, and they said, "What's your name?" And he said, "I'm not sure." And so everybody thinks his name is not sure. They're irrigating the crops with Gatorade instead of water, and they can't figure out why everything dies. It's just, but that's where we are, man. That's where we are with this idiocracy coming to life. But you literally have people that are saying, so what's wrong with Christians, honestly? Like there are obviously there's a turd in every punch bowl. I get it. So there's some people out there that are fake Christians, and they're not what they say they are, and they're just bad people. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. They're not. But honest to gosh, people that are trying to live by Christian values, the Amish, for instance, good Jewish people that are just trying to live by their values. Their religions are not wolves in sheep clothing for taking over societies like Islam. Islam is a militant governance. It has nothing to do with religion. It is not God. It's Luciferian. Communism, Luciferian. But those are taking root, and they're demonizing God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and they're demonizing something as good for society as just basic rules. Think about everything that's broken in every major city. If you could just say, all right, guys, y'all start living by the 10 Commandments. Fixed, right? Everything that's broken in, one neighborhood where things are really messed up, let's get in here and get everybody living by the 10 Commandments. Fixed. It's just fascinating. So the Judeo-Christian values that founded America, that came out of the best of what Europe had to offer, people fleeing Europe, but some of the best that Europe had to offer in minds and intent coming over here, forming this great country. And it really is worth fighting for. So this next segment is really interesting, y'all. It's really, really interesting. So I'll play a segment with a couple of segments from RFK Jr., and then I want to talk a little bit about seed oils.
Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting, the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that's going to make people sick? And then, in the end, we all end up paying for that in terms of healthcare costs, which are skyrocketing.
Yeah, because that is a direct result of corruption. About 75% of FDA's budget comes from regulated industry, and that means food processors and pharmaceutical industry. All of them profit from a sick population.
My gosh. You hear that stuff, and everybody's like, yeah, what do y'all want to eat Tuesday? Let's go back over some of the things we heard. Cannot avoid them because they're so rampant in food. Okay? Cannot avoid seed oils at this point. I mean, you literally practically have to eat them somehow, somewhere, unless you just, kind of go pure blue-headed freak. And, that these things cause body-wide inflammation and problems. Body-wide, okay? So I don't know about you, but somebody goes, yeah, man, you do that, it might make your big toe hurt. It'd be like, yes, but hey, you do that, it's going to go from head to toe, end to end, all the way. And it's like, ooh, okay, I heard the word corruption. Okay, who's corrupt? Our government. RFK Jr. is literally saying that the seed oil debacle that we have in our society right now, in America, which is somewhat unique to America, the next clip will help explain that, is heavily tied to corruption. So what kind of corruption? Government subsidies. So we, taxpayers, subsidize the buying of these food products by the general public. So WIC and welfare and EBT are heavily steered towards these types of foods, which we know make people sick. And it's like, oh my gosh. And then I heard food industry and pharmaceutical industry that are in this thing, that are part of the corruption. They're part of the fact that we can't avoid it. And there's nobody that's doing enough about it. It's maddening. And so let's go round two. Now we're talking about even further.
In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So it's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to processed foods, which are all poison.
Right. One of the things that's interesting is you'll see on labels natural flavors, which is this catch-all phrase that I guess was lobbied for, but the ingredients in natural flavors are not really natural.
No. In our country, natural flavors are chemical products. So you can't trust what's on the ingredient label, and the reason for that, again, is government corruption. It's that the agency, the USDA, the FDA, have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate, and they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Holy hell. Squirrel hell. All right, let's play word game again. I couldn't write fast enough. 1,000 chemicals approximately that are banned in Europe that we put in our food. Because why? Because we just don't care what we eat, I guess. I mean, think about it. Once again, pitchforks out, raid the town square. I'm not talking about violence, but I'm talking about, by gosh, we should not be letting ourselves be poisoned. What is wrong with us? All right. subsidized 70% of processed foods, subsidized. He said they're all poison. Quote, all poison. Okay? He said that you cannot trust what's on a label in the United States of America, that they play with words. It's not legit. He mentions corruption again and says the FDA, the EPA, and other agencies that are supposed to be protecting us are captured, and that they're part of a rigged game with all of these subsidies, and y'all, our health doesn't matter. And so Gwen and I do everything that we can to some reasonable level. When we're cooking at home, we don't use seed oils, okay? So we've gotten away from it. But man, you can't go. You're going to be one weird cat if you're out there in the whole wide world trying not to eat a seed oil in America. And my question is this: why the heck hadn't they gotten this stuff out of our food? It's poison, y'all. So I'm going to prove it to you today. I've done the research. I've jumped into the science, and here's the point that I'm going to make to you: these seed oils have not just come to be found to be unhealthy for you. Okay. They are chemically, factually deadly for you, and they know it. You can't somebody in the food industry that says, "Hey, let's take some zombie blood and let's make some sort of a human, product out of it." They're going into it. It's like, okay, well, why we want to start with zombie blood? Couldn't we come up with something better, substrate to start from? I mean, that said, well, all you got to do is touch a zombie. You turn into a zombie. Tell you what, let's make some juice out of some zombie blood. That's how twisted it is that you have seed oils in the human diet. Okay, so. First of all, we think of seed oils. Everybody goes canola oils. Y'all know there's not a canola. Everybody's like, yeah, I guess that canola comes from that canola plant. There ain't no canola plant. It's rapeseed. They just called it canola because it's better marketing. It's a rapeseed oil. So all of these seed oils are literally toxic. They are wonderful manufacturing products, really good on the farm, really good in mechanical industry, factory settings, all of that sort of stuff. But nobody in their right mind would have ever thought about taking those oils and consuming them. Like you couldn't have held your great granddaddy down that if he had a farm and made him drink that stuff. He'd be like, no way. All right. So before I go in and tell you how they make it, let me tell you what it does. Let me tell you why they know it's poison. Okay. All right. Number one, it's the chemical compound, the starting point of the chemical compound that is so destructive in the human body is linoleic acid. Okay. It's also called LA. Okay. Not Los Angeles, linoleic acid. So let's call it LA. Once LA enters your body, it doesn't clear quickly. You would think, well, within a day or two. No. The half-life of LA in the human adipose tissue, okay, is approximately 680 days, about 2 years. That's the half-life. That means that half of the linoleic acid, LA, stored from today's intake is still present in your body 2 years later. 1/4 of that remains for 4 years, okay? And then it says replacing 95% of the existing tissue load under a consistently low LA diet requires 6 years. So if you stopped today from all the seed oil that you've been consuming, it's going to be 6 years. If you stop, generally stop. You almost can't get away from it because of what they've done. But if you just try to stay away from it, you're looking at a 6-year haul to clear your system of it. Okay? So they knew that. We just figured that out. No, they knew that. This stuff was never, ever for animal consumption or human consumption. And why do all the pets have all the same diseases humans have now? We've been pumping our pets full of this stuff too. So let me explain to you kind of the chemical difference between, say, animal fat, which was the gold standard, okay, for food for the thousands of years of human existence, until some industrialist said, hey, let's take this old manufacturing stinky stuff over here and let's make some Crisco out of it. And we'll get everybody to eat, quote unquote, vegetable oil. It is industrial poison. It doesn't, and I'm not making that up, y'all. It's just as sure as anything. And so let me explain kind of the chemistry behind why this doesn't work, and I'll go kind of simple, and then we'll go a little more detailed. But this is something you really ought to be looking at, because it is creating havoc in your body right now. All right, so y'all hang with me now. This is, don't let it confuse you. This will be a semi-scientific one that even I sit and go, huh? And then we'll go down and we'll simplify it a little bit. But the impact of seed oils, all of them, okay, on the body is happening at the cellular level. It first starts at the cell membrane level. So cell membranes are phospholipid bilayers, okay? So imagine 2 layers of cell membrane. Each has 2 fatty acid tails. So just imagine on the cell membrane, you got these 2 tails sticking up. The type of fatty acid determines the physical properties of the membrane, okay? Saturated fats, which are the dominant fats in butter and tallow and ghee, okay, they have a straight hydrocarbon chain with no double bonds, okay? So just imagine you got 2 little hairs sticking up off the membrane, and here comes a saturated fat membrane, and it's just one little arm sticking out, okay? And these chains pack tightly side by side, producing a very ordered, stable, less fluid membranes that are resistant to oxidative attack. Okay, so what I just described is in the way that human beings have eaten saturated fats our entire life, that all of a sudden back in the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000, we're like, saturated fats is the devil. You need to go these polyunsaturated fats. You need to be doing these seed oils, and all of this. They took away something that worked. The cellular membrane functioned properly with saturated fat. So linoleic acid is different, okay? So unlike the saturated fats, it just had the one straight hydrocarbon. They don't have double bonds, just one straight. The linoleic acid has 2 double bonds. So it comes down with like these 4 prongs, and these introduce kinks in the chain, preventing tight packing on the membrane level. So membranes enriched with LA, linoleic acid, seed oil, become more fluid and disordered. And more importantly, those double bonds create chemically vulnerable sites, so gaps. Okay, and there's these hydrogen gaps that are located between the double bonds. Those hydrogen gaps are easily attacked by free radicals, all right? Reactive oxygen, right? And so when people talk about, free radicals or, that you have these really strong antioxidants. So oxidation, this is caused an oxidation within the cell, starting at the cell membrane. And once a radical forms on that LA molecule, it creates a chain reaction. And then you have what's called peroxidization. Okay, sounds terrible, right? So let's see if we can take a stab at making that simpler. So saturated fats like butter, animal fats, ghee, right? They don't have these vulnerable sites. They don't initiate or propagate peroxidization chains. Peroxidation chains under these conditions. But linoleic acid does, even at body temperature. All right, let's step back, and now let's say this in just common, good old American language. Your cells are wrapped in a thin layer of fat that acts like a protective wall and door system, okay? That cell membrane. The fat from butter and animal fat is straight, like solid bricks. These bricks stack very tightly, and the wall stays strong, orderly, and hard for oxygen to attack. It's hard for oxygen to attack. So you're not going to have that oxidation occur at the cell membrane level, okay? Makes sense? The fat from the butter and animal fat is straight like solid bricks, and they lay nice and tight and neat, and they don't have any gaps, and it's very difficult for oxygen to attack it. The main fat in the seed oils, which is the linoleic acid, LA, is bent like crooked sticks. And these crooked sticks leave gaps and weak spots. And then oxygen easily attacks those weak spots, and the fat starts going rancid inside your cells. The same way that cooking oil turns rancid in a bottle, only it's slower and it's at body temperature. And those broken pieces then damage the cell, the cell energy factories, which is the mitochondria and other machinery. So butter and animal fat, saturated fat, build strong walls, and seed oils build walls that slowly fall apart from the inside. Now, hang with me. This is something that you really want to understand. The point that I'm making is that science knew this before they ever put the Crisco in a can. This is not new. Nobody had to go figure this out. This is easily known. This is the chemical makeup of the seed oil itself in relationship to the chemical makeup of the cell, a human cell or animal cell membranes. And what it does, we haven't even gotten started yet. Just keep with me. So here's the next step. So when that linoleic acid, the LA seed, starts to break down inside your body, it doesn't disappear. It shatters into smaller, highly reactive pieces. Scientists call these pieces oxalams, OXLAMS, oxalams. It's one of the most damaging oxalams is a molecule named 4-HNE. Okay, so just bear with me. Just 4-HNE bad. So the 4-HNE is a sticky, aggressive chemical fragment. It latches onto the proteins that run your cells. The 4-HNE is sticky, and it latches onto your DNA and onto other fats. Once it sticks, those proteins in DNA no longer work like they're supposed to. They work improperly. Enzymes slow down or fail. Cell signals get scrambled. The cell's energy factory, which is the mitochondria, gets damaged, and then inflammation increases. The same process makes cholesterol particles in your blood more likely to become oxidized, okay? So it's creating oxidation, whatever you call it, everywhere in the body, and it could go anywhere. There's nowhere that's off limits. These oxidized particles are more easily taken up into the artery walls where they can contribute to plaque buildup, okay? So it's unbelievable. Now let's talk a little bit about what these oils are, what they're actually talking about, asking a cat to bark. This is a cat. This is not a human consumptive oil. This is a cat that they've been asking to bark to the detriment of human health and animal health in America now for decades. The chemistry is the same. Linseed oil, okay, this what you use it for is for a varnish. So the same chemistry that makes linseed oil turn into a really hard varnish, or cause a pile of really oily rags to spontaneously catch fire. Inside the human body, the same chemical reaction happens more slowly. It's the same. But the broken pieces show up in different places and get different medical names: skin damage, artery lesions, joint wear, cloudy eye lenses, changes in brain tissue. But they all start from the same rancid fat reaction. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Butter and other animal fats cannot start this cascade. They cannot start this chemical reaction because they lack the double bonds that create the weak spots that oxygen attacks. So you're literally taking, if you can imagine, you're shoving this square peg into a round hole of our body. You're asking a cat to bark with this industrial oil. It gets into the cellular level. It doesn't fit right. It creates all of these gaps that oxidize. Then these things break off into these molecules, 4-HNE. They stick to your properly functioning DNA, the properly functioning fats, properly functioning proteins, enzymes, and they slow everything down and things start to just get scrambled. The communication between cells gets scrambled. Y'all, that's what causes so many of these cancers and different things, is when your cells just simply start misfiring. It's really, really scary stuff. But let's talk a little bit about how you actually make seed oil, because even that, it would be like saying, hey, like I said, let's take this zombie blood. Now, this stuff is really bad. Don't let it touch you. Oh, I had to touch Bob, but Bob turned into a zombie. Y'all shoot Bob. All right, let's get back to work now. Let's get this blood into some sort of oil that we can cook with. It's like, why did we start with this? Why did somebody start with something that is chemically incompatible with the human body? And, we could have started with what we already had. So, but let's talk a little bit about how we make how we take these manufacturing oils and put them in bottles that are nice and clear and put them on the grocery shelf. Like, you really would like to understand, okay, how do they make these things? So we all kind of have that, well, the olive press, how they press the olives and it creates the olive oil. Okay, no, that's not what we're talking about here at all. So crude seed oils, they have to be extracted with hexane. Okay, so a crude seed oil is going to have free fatty acids, phospholipids like gums, pigments, metals, residual solvent traces. They've got peroxides, aldehydes, ketones, and they're kind of dark and they're cloudy and they stink. They have a rancid odor. And so they have to start with this really rancid, disgusting seed oil. And they say, okay, well, how are we going to make this where human beings would eat it? So the first process, most common, is degumming. Okay, water and or acid, usually like phosphoric or citric acid, is mixed into the crude oil, and this hydrates the phospholipids so they can be separated by a centrifuge. So then they spin it around, and metals and some of the impurities are also reduced. So at this stage, the oil becomes cleaner, but it still has free fatty acids and color and odor issues. So it's not edible yet. So then they have neutralization, which is alkali refining. A measured amount of caustic soda, which is sodium hydroxide, is added. It reacts with the free fatty acids to form a soap stock, which is centrifuged out, right? So they basically create that soap stock, and then they spin it, and that removes the additional residual gums, some pigments, and certain oxidation products. The oil is then washed and dried. We're not finished, though. So now we have bleaching. The oil is mixed with activated bleaching earth, which is a special treating clay, under a vacuum at a roughly 80 to 110 degrees Celsius. Okay, the clay absorbs the pigments, so the clay pulls out the carotenoids and the chlorophyll, residual soaps, trace metals, and a portion of the polar oxidization products and peroxides. The spent clay is then filtered out with all of the stuff in it, and this step lightens the color significantly and improves the stability of the oil for the next stage. The next stage is it still stinks. It has this terrible rancid smell, so they have deodorization. So high temperature steam distillation under a strong vacuum. The oil's heated to 230 to 260 degrees Celsius. That's hot. And then while steam is pushed through it under very low pressure. And so what it does, the volatile compounds responsible for odor and off flavor, including aldehydes and ketones from oxidation, are stripped out by the steam and removed. Residual free fatty acids are reduced further. Some remaining peroxides are thermally decomposed, and then additional heat bleaching or residual pigment occurs. The result is a bland, near odorless, light-colored oil that meets commercial standards for clarity, smell, and shelf appearance. Damn. So, unbelievable, okay? So that's what these oils go through to get them on the shelf, but they're still starting out. They're rancid in the bottle. What does that mean? So rancid in the bottle is a statement you'll see a lot. I had to do some research. I'm like, that just sounds so terrible. What does that mean? It means that the seed oil's already undergone an oxidative breakdown while it's sitting in its container before you even open or cook with it. And it's relatively well accepted that that process has started because of what we just discussed. It starts out as a terribly rancid, it's not fit for human consumption or animal consumption. They take it through all of this chemical treatments. They put it in a bottle, but it begins to break back down. So fats with multiple double bonds, particularly linoleic acid and seed oils, they react with oxygen over time. That creates these hydroperoxides, okay? And then secondary compounds such as aldehydes and ketones. So that's what gives the smelly stink or the painty taste, sometimes darker color, to seed oils. So even if a seed oil is on the shelf and it doesn't show any signs of oxidation, it's probably started to slowly reoxidize on the shelf when it's exposed to light or heat, residual air, or if it has metal traces still in it. So the oil is chemically deteriorating even while it's still sealed. I mean, that's what this stuff is. And so what are some of the health detriments, okay? The consuming seed oils, LA, is something that we really, as a society, we need to demand that it be taken out of our food. Okay, so I'll run through some of these things and I'll close with my own opinion on it. But impaired enzyme function and disruptive cellular signaling. Okay, that's a lot of autoimmune stuff, cancers, mitochondrial dysfunction, reduced energy, ATP. So a lot of folks are brain fog, tired, just don't increase oxidative stress and depletion of antioxidant defenses, right? So it's one thing to need antioxidants, another thing to feed yourself an oxidizing product. Let's just get to what are some of the names? So obesity and difficulty to lose weight. It promotes fat storage, disrupts energy regulation, and makes stored fat more inflammatory when released. And remember, it's going to stay in your system for 2, then 4, then 6 years. So it's going to slowly get out of your system over a 6-year period. But half of it's still in your system 2 years from now. Heart disease and artery problems, increase oxidized LDL particles that contribute to plaque buildup in the arteries. Okay, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. LA, seed oils damage cellular energy systems and promote chronic low-grade inflammation that interferes with blood sugar control. It interferes with muscle uptake, right? And so cancer promotion, oxidative stress and mitochondrial damage can support environments that favor abnormal cell growth from cancer. Brain and cognitive issues include higher risk for Alzheimer's and other neurodegeneration. The brain is rich in membranes that become more vulnerable to oxidative damage. You just don't want oxidation proliferated throughout your body from every freaking thing you eat. It's just unbelievable. Chronic body-wide inflammation, right? Fibromyalgia, pain, don't know where all this came from. Ongoing production of inflammatory pathways is activated. Low energy, joint pain, faster joint wear, skin problems, accelerated skin aging, eye issues such as increased cataracts and lens clouding. You've got liver stress and fatty liver tendencies. High linoleic acid loads have been linked to greater liver fat accumulation and liver damage. Gut barrier weakness from digestive inflammation can increase intestinal permeability. Faster overall aging. That's good. Everybody rubs everything, drinks that, does this. You're eating something out of every box, every loaf of bread, every chip, a lot of the animals that you're eating have been fed, seed oil diets, and it's just accelerating aging for every one of us. Cumulative protein, DNA, and membrane damage accelerates wear and tear across all tissues. And then worsened recovery from alcohol and other stressors. So whatever sort of stress you've got going on to the liver or other organs can become much more vulnerable when membranes are already loaded with oxidized fats. Woo! So here's what I have to say, y'all. Asking a cat to bark, ponying up first, being the kind of person that steps out and just says the obvious thing. When somebody goes, yeah, I tell you what, we're going to have to try our best not to eat them damn seed oils. So tell you what, I'm over here and I'm going, you get the seed oils out of our freaking food is what you do. There shouldn't be another product allowed to be made in the United States of America with this stuff in it. I don't care if it's a cracker, a potato chip. It doesn't matter what it is. This is poison. It's not poison because I said it's poison. It's poison because of the science, the true unadulterated, black and white, indisputable science says it's not ingestible in the human or animal body. Don't feed it to your pet unless you hate it. No human being should be eating seed oils. It's not fit for digestion. It goes immediately to the cellular level, and because of the way it's structurally designed, it begins to create oxidation at the cellular level, disrupt all of your cellular pathways and proper cellular function, and it can create tremendous wreckage in the human body. And it's in every hamburger you eat out, every French fry. In 1990, McDonald's quit frying French fries in beef tallow and switched over to some type of seed oil. So every French fry, all the buns, when you go to anything now, soybean oil, it doesn't matter which one of these seed oils it is. They're all loaded up with linoleic acid, and linoleic acid is poison in your body. Get it out of our food. So that clip you heard from Robert Kennedy Jr., where he was saying all these things, sitting there writing it down, going, holy cow, that's a mouthful. I can't believe we've got corruption. We've got alignment. We've got epistemic capture. They do it to us, so they don't care. They're killing us. All that stuff that he said was from 2024. We're coming upon 3 years. What are we going to do as a country to get the poison out of our food? Your kids are eating this. How would you like to be having to take care of a baby right now, trying to figure out, well, how do I feed my baby where my baby doesn't get this stuff in there? Who wants to feed their baby cellular damage? Wow. Unbelievable. Well, let's see if we can't go out on a little bit finer note as we talk a little bit about the best practice of, aligning your team, being a pony up leader, asking a cat to bark. It's looking around at things and saying, we need to stand up for what's right in America. America is a Judeo-Christian country that was founded on the basic principles of Christianity, which strongly include the Ten Commandments. And if you're raising kids, you remember when you were raising kids and, you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever, maybe a little older these days, but you're sitting there and you're like, man, you start reading your kids all these good books and you're like, man, I got to start living better. It's like, I got to live up to this stuff I'm teaching my kids, and it does. Raising kids kind of makes you go back and double down on, you sing Jesus Loves Me every night and you walk down the stairs, you're like, man, Jesus does love me. And you see these kids and they look back and you see that there is a God. Wow, this is amazing. It's unbelievable. And God is so good and he's so wonderful. And then we've let him kick him out of the kids' school that they were going to go to. They've kicked him out of the kids' church. They've kicked him out of so many different things. He can't even pray at a football game. We can't even have girls go have, a game just against girls. And it's like, enough. It's time to pony up. They're asking a cat to bark. Call it out. Use some language. And it's just time for us to draw the line and go, get the poison out of our food now, not later, now. Let's go out with Jimmy. Can you believe it? Jimmy Stewart is going to tell us a joke on the way out.
The story is about the man and his wife sitting having breakfast. Very nice couple. And the man said, Margaret, no, it was the other way around. Margaret said to John, John, if I would die, would you get married right away after my death? But John said, well, that's the darndest thing. Here's a beautiful morning, and we're sitting here having a nice breakfast together, and you bring up this terrible thing about death. I'm not going to talk to you. That's a terrible thing to do, Margaret. And I forget about it. But she didn't forget about it, and she brought the same thing up that night. And he did the same thing. And then for about 3 days, she said, now, what, if I would die, would you get married? Finally, he gave up, and he said, one night, she said, if I would die, would you get married again? He said, yes, I would. No, is that settled? She said, would you sell the house? He said, no. I wouldn't sell the house. She said, would you sell our bed? He said, no. No, I wouldn't. It's our bed. I don't see any reason why. No, I wouldn't sell the bed. She said, well, you certainly wouldn't let her touch my golf clubs. And he said, no, she's left-handed.
That's funny, man. The old timers could tell a story. You just gotta love Jimmy Stewart. It looks like he was up to no good and she knew it. But anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed the Mel Blackwell Experience today and look forward to catching up with you next time. Cheers.